The story behind my most painful poem. Have you ever read a poem and felt pain hidden between the lines? As if every word was written with tears, as if every sentence was bleeding from the heart. That is what happened with me. I never planned to write such a poem. I never wanted to write it. But life left me no choice. And today, I will finally tell you the story behind the most painful poem I have ever written. I remember that night as if it was yesterday. The world around me was quiet, but inside my chest there was a storm that refused to rest. I picked up the pen not because I wanted to create beauty, not because I wanted to be a poet. I picked it up because my hands were trembling, my heart was heavy, and I had nowhere else to place my pain. That poem was never just written on paper. It was carved out of a broken soul. At first, I wanted to hide it. I wanted it to remain buried where no one could see it. It was not meant for the world. It was not meant for any eyes but mine. So why did I share it? Why did I open a wound that had never healed? The truth is simple. When your soul is carrying more weight than it can bear, sometimes you write not to be understood, but to survive the night. That poem came from such a night. It was a night where everything I loved was slipping away from me. Slowly, painfully, like grains of sand falling through my fingers. I wrote about silence, the silence of a voice I would never hear again. I wrote about shadows, shadows that followed me even when the sun was shining. Every line I wrote was a confession I could never speak aloud. And yet, every word was a cry that refused to stay locked inside my chest. What made that poem different was not its rhymes. It was not the beauty of its words. What made it powerful was the truth. Raw, sharp, and merciless truth. The kind of truth that makes your hands shake as you write. The kind of truth that strips away all masks. I stared at the page, wondering if I should tear it apart, afraid of what it revealed. Because if someone read it, they would see me, the real me, the broken me. People admire beautiful poems. But painful poems? They see the scars behind them. That is why I hid it. I folded it, unfolded it, read it, cried over it, and hid it again. But no matter how much I tried, those words haunted me. They weren't just sentences, they were alive. Each night, when I closed my eyes, I could hear them whisper back to me. So why did I share it? Because sometimes pain is too heavy for one heart alone. Sometimes it needs to be carried by many. I thought maybe out there, someone was feeling the same. Maybe someone was waiting for a voice to whisper, I understand. When people read that poem, they called it beautiful. But to me, it was not beautiful at all. It was raw. It was ugly. It was everything I had tried to hide. And maybe that is why it touched people, because it was not perfect. It was real. Even now, when I think of it, I don't see words. I see the night I wrote them. I see the tears that refused to stop. I hear the silence that was louder than screams. That is what makes it my most painful poem, not the lines themselves, but the story behind them. That night was not peaceful. It was the kind of night when silence is heavier than noise, when your own thoughts scream louder than the world outside. I sat with a pen, not because I wanted to, but because I had no other way to survive. That poem was not about ordinary love or ordinary sadness. It came from something much deeper, something I had buried for years. And when the pain finally broke free, it spilled onto the page like a flood. Each line felt like a knife cutting me open. And yet, it was also the only way I could breathe. Most people think poems are crafted with beauty in mind, with words carefully chosen. But that night, I did not choose the words. The words chose me. They forced themselves out. And I could not stop them. What made the poem so painful was not only what it revealed, but the truth it forced me to face. A truth I had been running from for years. A truth I had buried under silence and smiles. That poem became my confession. Not in scars upon my skin, but in sentences upon the page. You might think the hardest part of pain is living through it. But no. Sometimes the hardest part is admitting it. Because once it is written, once it is alive outside of you, you cannot deny it anymore. You cannot run from it. That is why my hands trembled. And as I kept writing, I realized something even heavier. The poem was not just about me. Every word carried the shadow of someone I could never forget. Every line carried their absence. I never wrote their name, but I felt them in every single syllable. It was as if the poem itself was pulling them back into my life, even though I had tried to let go. That was the true weight of it. Because while I poured my pain onto the page, I knew I could never share it freely. Not with them. Not with the world. It was too raw, too fragile. And yet, that is what gave it its power. It carried the truth I could barely admit to myself. Even now, when I read it, I feel the same storm I felt that night. Not because the pain still rules me, but because it reminds me of the moment I finally faced it. That is why it is my most painful poem, not the words themselves, but the truth they hold. It was a truth that nearly broke me. But what happened next surprised me. One evening, while the world outside was full of laughter and voices, my room was silent. The ticking clock was the only sound. Each tick pushed me deeper into my thoughts. That was when I found a blank 95 piece of paper. I didn't plan it, but my hand picked up the pen as if guided by something unseen. At first, I wrote random lines. But soon the words began to carry weight. Each sentence was not just a thought. It was a cry, a wound, a confession. And I realized something strange. Sometimes we do not even know how much we are holding inside until the pen reveals it. The poem was not neat. It was not beautiful in the ordinary sense. It was broken, uneven, raw. But that is what made it real. Because life is not smooth, and neither was that page. Halfway through, I had to stop. My hands shook. My chest was heavy. I felt like the paper was pulling secrets from me that I had never dared to share. Have you ever spoken or written something, and suddenly realized you had revealed too much of your heart? That is what happened to me. When I finally looked at the page, it didn't feel like mine. The words came from somewhere deeper than I had ever touched. That is why the poem became the most painful of all. Because hidden inside those lines was not just sadness. It was the story of loss, of letting go, of silent battles no one else could see. Every time I read it, it feels like opening a wound that never healed. And I ask myself, why do we sometimes create the most powerful things in our weakest moments? I never thought one memory could weigh so heavily on my heart. But it did. That evening, in the silence of my room, I was pulled back into memories I had tried to forget. And in that silence, the first lines of my poem escaped. Not gently, not softly. They tore themselves free. And the worst part was not the memory, but the helplessness it carried. Why do some people leave marks so deep that even time cannot erase them? That question burned inside me until I could no longer hold it back. So I wrote it down. Every line was a confession I could never say out loud. And when I finished, I did not feel free. Instead, I felt exposed, as if my hidden wounds had been laid bare. And yet, I could not stop myself. That poem was not just words. It was the raw truth of a love that once gave me life and then slowly took it away. And the greatest surprise, the same poem that was born from my deepest pain became the one that touched the hearts of so many. People called it beautiful. They told me it gave them comfort. They said it healed them. But every time they said that, I smiled politely while inside, I was reliving the hurt that created it. And that is the truth of my most painful poem.